Our journey begins in a small medieval building in the back streets of Paris.
As you can see, it's now a restaurant, but it's believed that once this was Nicolas Flamel's house here in Paris. It's claimed that he was a 14th century alchemist who achieved the very highest level of alchemy, the philosopher's stone, the ability to turn base lead into gold. Now, it's also believed that he perfected the formula for the elixir of life, which would have allowed him to live forever. Now, this is debatable, bearing in mind he died in 1418.
There are certainly accounts of people living for an awful long time, including the Count de Saint-Germain. How true it is, we don't know. We certainly know that John Dee, of course, who was Queen Elizabeth's alchemist, tried to perfect some form of elixir of life for the Queen, of course, who wanted to live forever. He didn't manage it, but she did live for nearly 60 years.
As the story goes, he learnt these skills from an ancient Hebrew manuscript, which he spent his life translating. Now, to be honest, it's all pretty fantastical stuff. And to top it all, although he died in the 15th century and he's buried here in Paris, there were still sightings of him in the 16th and 17th century. Now, that is one hell of a magic trick.
In each century of the last 1,000 years, a figure has emerged from history who stands out by their sheer, well, bizarreness. Men who simply defy easy description, who are seemingly able to perform wondrous feats that defy science. They are the alchemists. But who are they?
An alchemist generally is associated with the search for the philosopher's stone. But the search for the philosopher's stone, which is really the ideal of alchemy, is in fact, it's not everything that an alchemist would be doing. An alchemist at root is a chemist, is somebody who is discovering through practice, through experiments, through observation, the hidden properties of ordinary substances, from salt to metals to various kinds of ore, and it may be involved in the manufacture of acids, alkalis, alums, and effectively he's looking for new substances, new combinations, new paths to understanding the way the creation is made.
Well, they were the pioneers of basically chemistry and medicine, but they used not only natural earth powers, but also supernatural forces. So there was a big spiritual element in the whole thing.
It's this link to the paranormal and the spiritual that has shrouded alchemy in a veil of mystery. This has led to the exact nature of their work, especially the perfection of the philosopher's stone, being debated for nearly 1,000 years, throwing up all manner of bizarre explanations and theories along the way.
The philosopher's stone is sort of the intellectual's holy grail. It has been attributed as being everything and anything under the sun. I, however, think there's a school of thought that I'm agreeing with when I say this. But the philosopher's stone is something that all men and women have within them. And I'm not talking spirituality, I'm talking human urine. The elixir of life is what the philosopher's stone is said to be. And now, with that knowledge, when you go back and look at what the sages and mystics are saying, the fool holds it in his hand but gives it away. Every man has it in his sight and steps on the ground. The fool throws it away, the wise man keeps it. You go back and you look at the way the philosopher's stone has been addressed, and it's completely consistent with the fountain of youth, the elixir of life, human urine, the preserver of health, longevity, the fountain of youth.
Another thing, of course, that the alchemists believed was that the philosopher's stone could create the elixir of life. And a lot of people actually died trying it, because one of the things that people used to do was drink potions, including liquid gold, which, of course, killed them. They thought that because they could transmute something that was basic into something much better, they thought that they could probably do the same thing with the body and with the spirit, but they didn't manage it.
But the big question is, does alchemy really work? Can it be demonstrated to me today here in central London? Well, the scientists I'm about to meet say, yes, it can.
Professor Andrea Sella and Dr. Marcos Martinon Torres from University College in London agreed to demonstrate some of the greatest alchemical processes, including the creation of gases from solids, the manufacture and distillation of acids and alkalines, and most intriguing of all, the turning of base metal into gold. It was time to light the touch paper and let the magic begin.
Wow. What I want to know is, Marcos, is it possible to turn base metals into gold?
The answer is yes, it is possible. The question is whether this would have been possible to a medieval alchemist. The boring fact is that it's not possible. Today we know, and we can set the record straight, that no alchemist would ever manage or have managed to transform lead into gold using chemical methods. We know that's impossible. To transform one atom into another, we need physical methods. But this is not to say that when people made a transmutation, like sulfur into this rubbery substance, that they did try to cheat or that they were deceiving or lying, because they could see a transmutation. So I'm going to try and show you a transmutation of copper into silver and then into gold that will illustrate how people did effect transmutations. They were transforming a substance into another and quite possibly believing that they had achieved that transmutation. So they were not necessarily trying to lie.
Okay.
So we're just hitting here some caustic soda, sodium hydroxide, and what we're going to mix in as it warms up is a little bit of zinc powder. So this is just metallic zinc that's being ground very fine. But as we mix it with a little bit of zinc, so this is metal, but it's just being ground very, very finely, just so that the reaction can take place faster.
So what are we hoping is going to happen now to the zinc?
Well, we're going to produce a complex sodium zincate. So we are going to, as it were, bring the zinc into solution. Correct me if I'm wrong. You are the chemist.
Absolutely.
And then we are going to undertake an electrolytic reaction when we put the copper in. We'll come to that in a second.
Would early alchemists have been carrying out exactly this kind of experiment?
Well, this is one that would only be undertaken relatively recently because metallic zinc only really appears in Europe systematically from the 17th, 18th century. But this illustrates one of a repertoire of other experiments taking place earlier as well that would visually transform one metal into another and lead people into believing that they had indeed succeeded with transmutation.
And when we talk about the Philosopher's Stone, that's what it is that we're talking about, right? Turning lead into gold, is that right?
Yeah, generally, yes. The Philosopher's Stone is that ultimate ambition of many alchemists. It's that wonderful substance that would have the power of transmutation, that would be allowing humans to transform one metal into another, one substance into another, typically a better substance. So the king of those transmutations would, of course, be the transformation of lead into gold, base metals into gold, but others believe that the healing power of the stone would also allow to cure illness, to extend life, and so on. So that's what the Philosopher's Stone was about.
There is always in alchemical history the idea that this thing must be possible. It ought to be possible to transmute base metals into gold. But accounts of it actually being done are rare. So, and it is also a very strange factor. I noticed a friend of mine, we were talking about alchemy recently, and he was saying in all the works on alchemy he'd read in the great libraries of Europe, he never found one with any chemical stains on the pages. I think this is very telling. I don't think most of the books we have on alchemy that we use that we're often using to try and find out what alchemy is and what the Philosopher's Stone was were any more than commentaries on what practical people were actually doing. We get much closer to it with things like Isaac Newton's notes on alchemy, where he's actually talking about process. So many of the books on alchemy are about principle more than praxis.
So I'm going to take a relatively clean copper coin with apologies to the Queen, though she might be flattered that we are turning this into a nobler metal. And we are going to just dip it into this liquid. And very quickly, you can see the color is beginning to change. The copper is acting as a cathode, so individual ions of zinc are being reduced and deposited on the surface of the coin.
The color of the copper is actually fading now, and it's becoming kind of whiter. Very, very strange process that simply on heating in the right solution, we can turn, the bright, familiar copper color into something else.
So we're not zinc plating the copper, are we? Is that what we're doing?
Yes,
Well, in a sense, that's what we're doing. But remember, nowadays, we know about these different elements.
Right.
And of course, we know what the answer is. But to someone who has never seen this before, to someone who's doing this for the first time, one of the key things about this kind of early science is the fact that they only have 3 things to go on. They can look at it, they can taste it or smell it, or alternatively, they can either bash it or transform it in some physical way. And so really, there are very, very few methods to identify what it is that you've got. In many ways, I think that is one of the big differences between modern chemistry and alchemy, is that now we have so much more powerful tools.
Yeah. Now look at this.
Wow. That's amazing. So what have we had? So we have a copper 2p coin.
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
Just cooling it down so we can handle it.
A copper 2p coin that now looks like a 10p coin.
That's right. So we're adding to its value.
Wow. Yeah. Is this technically legal?
Actually, it isn't.
That's a very good question.
I know the answer.
We could be arrested.
But maybe, and now we cannot claim ignorance because I've said it, right?
The thing is that what we have here is a solution to George Osborne's problems.
Right.
Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Brilliant.
It's quite interesting to think that there were guys in those days that genuinely did believe that they were creating gold. I'm sure they'd have been very wealthy if they really did. There's a fascinating story about a guy in medieval times that actually created brass by mixing copper filings with hemimorphite, which is zinc ore. When the two came together and he heated it up and did whatever he had to do with it, he created this amazing gold metal and genuinely believed that he'd created gold. It was only when he took it to a goldsmith that he was told he hadn't, but he actually created brass.
This isn't gold, though. I was hoping that you were going to be able to show me how you could turn the copper into gold.
OK, so we're going to do this right before your eyes.
Look closely.
Will happen quite quickly, hopefully.
OK.
You see the silver queen.
Uh-huh.
We're going to heat it.
What's happening? Oh, yeah, so the
And you can see
What? Oh, my God.
we've made gold.
That's amazing.
And this is an even better solution for George Osborne's problems.
The deficit is no more.
Oh, my goodness. Marcus, you've turned copper into gold. Is that...
There you have it.
That's a gold... That's a gold 2p. We've done it.
It's the nearest thing you're able to, you'll ever be able to get in that short amount of time.
Well, I'm very impressed. That is amazing. That is gold. That's a gold coin, right?
When you think about it, the idea of transmutation from lead into gold, though it sounds fantastic and to people who are hungry for money, it seems eminently desirable, is not a difficult concept to grasp. We today in chemistry continually refine products to produce better products. And if you produce the best oil, you'll certainly make the most gold. And in that sense, you already have an analogy there that if you can improve on a substance, it will make you money.
Basically, there's a world of difference between someone actually creating gold from a basic metal to someone else being able to electroplate something with zinc and creating brass, which today, of course, straight away, we know it's not gold. But 800 years ago, to the night soil men and the road sweepers and whoever else was around in medieval London in those days, these guys were magicians. They had actually, to the eye, created gold. And people believed it. And I think, to be honest with you, that's where the legends have gone down. But as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, no one's done it yet. They're probably still trying, but nobody's done it.
Now, although most people think that alchemy is from the past, there are still a few people who practice today, and I'm off to go and meet one of them. His name is Guy Ogilvy, and he says he learnt his craft from another alchemist whilst living in a cave in Mexico.
Guy Ogilvy is a modern-day practicing alchemist. He calls himself a potion maker, keeping the old traditions, formulas and secrets alive in rural Somerset.
It's been said that Dee and Flamel were able to turn lead into gold. Do you believe they could do that? I mean, can you do that?
I can't do it. I have never achieved the stone. I haven't even attempted to achieve the stone. I mean, that is the universal tincture, as they would call it, the highest medicine. And as a medicine, it was the elixir of youth. I'm a potion maker who applies alchemical processes and principles in order to make more and more rarefied medicines. I love the idea of achieving the stone. Realistically, long shot. But certainly, this whole business of the Philosopher's Stone is the great fascination and the lure behind alchemy. It's also the biggest snag in Western alchemy, because the whole focus is on gold making, whereas in ancient China, the whole focus was on the elixir of youth. It was all about achieving the universal tincture, which would afford you a kind of transcendence over material laws and give you immortality. And in India, again, it was all about making the highest possible medicines. But for them, the Philosopher's Stone was a reality as well.
I was keen to see Guy actually practice some alchemy, so, bucket in hand, he offered to collect some plants from the garden and create a potion for me.
All right. It being a Tuesday,
Right.
as in Mars Day, ruled by the planet Mars.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find some martial herbs. Here we go. Look, perfect.
Nettles.
Stinging nettles.
Right, OK.
Ruled by Mars, of course, warlike Mars. And today's perfect because it's a waxing moon during the zodiacal period of Aries. And Aries is ruled by Mars, so absolutely ideal to make the best possible.
And how many nettles do we need?
As many as you like. But what we'll do is, I'm going to make a nettle wine, first of all. So get a bucket full of nettles.
Right.
Get some good water on top of that.
OK.
We need to get a fermentation going, so I'm going to need to add some sugar and some yeast. Most plants have their own yeast on it, sufficient for a fermentation.
Hang on, we're going to make some booze.
We're going to make some booze.
Doesn't sound very alchemical.
Nettle wine.
Is that what the alchemists would have done?
Sure. I mean, we need to get the soul and the spirit out of these nettles, and the best way to get the soul out is to use the spirit. But the spirit is alcohol, which is only latent. It's latent in the plant. For those who think alchemically, that one can imagine a scenario where the alchemist is able to establish a relationship with nature which is so intimate, which is so special, that he or she has achieved a privileged position vis-a-vis the very nature of things. And in that privileged position, miracles can happen.
chuck a couple in. OK, so what do you do now?
Well, let's go to the lab and start brewing this up. There was a period in Western history when the philosopher's stone seemed to be around. There were fabulous tales of people confecting gold out of base metals. And, of course, everyone was fascinated. It's like, wow, how do you do that? How do you do that? It became the concern of kings. I mean, it's called the royal art. And kings were very concerned with alchemy. Of course they were, because gold was power. And if there was somebody in the neighborhood who could turn base metal, cheap metal, into gold, you wanted to have that guy in your castle doing the do straight away. And if he was in somebody else's neck of the woods, you wanted to go and seize that guy. There we go.
So, is this the kind of thing that they would have been doing in medieval times?
Absolutely. But this particular recipe dates back to Paracelsus. And put some rainwater on here. And this particular recipe dates back to the early 16th century.
And so what's the kind of plan? This then ferments?
Yeah, I'm going to add some yeast.
Right.
Let's get some yeast here and some sugar, because that's how you get your alcohol out of the plant. From the alchemist's point of view, we're not, as it were, making alcohol. We're drawing the alcohol out of the plant. So it's latent in the plant.
Right. So anyone could do this at home?
Anyone could do this at home. Yeah, well, I mean, people who are home brewers who make, you know, country wines, as they're called, which can be made from all kinds of stuff, you know, usually just anything but grapes. They're making, sort of, this time of year, they'll be making primrose wine. Mm-hmm. People have been making primrose wine for donkey's years.
And as far as the quantities are concerned, you're not working from a, you know, from a cookbook here, are you?
No, no, slosh it in. I mean, the yeast, all we're using the yeast for is to get a really good fermentation going. Sure. Once it's going, you're going to be the yeast will make itself, it'll grow.
There are practicing alchemists today. They probably live in obscurity, but obscurity is where alchemists technically were supposed to live. If you read Fasciculus Chemicus, which Elias Ashmole translated in 1650, he said the alchemist must live apart. He must live within his own root, as he puts it. He's meant to be a loner out there, invisibly investigating the universe. He mustn't get too close to the ways of the world, because to be a true alchemist is to be an adepted priest. It is a holy calling to be an alchemist. You are going to be imparted divine knowledge. You need a mind that is pure, that is able to receive higher influences, what we call noetic or netic influences into the mind, which transcend reason, which open the mind to a visionary state of reality.
A little bit more yeast.
OK, and then what happens next?
Well, once this has fermented out, so it starts fizzing and you know, you get a real foment going. Once that's finished, once that's done, and everything just sinks to the bottom and it all goes quiet, I will take that, leave that there, because that ain't going to happen now. It'll take about a week or so. Right. And then I will stick I'll stick a big funnel in here with a sieve and just pour it all in. That'll go into here. And then I will apply heat to the bottom of that. I will set up this puppy.
That looks pretty impressive. So what is this?
That is, that's a Graham condenser.
OK.
Was it a Davis condenser? I can't remember. It is a spiral coil condenser.
Spiral coil condenser, that'll do me.
And we will basically distill this over.
At the end of the process, what is it that we end up with? What do we have?
Well, we end up with a distilled, well, at the end of the whole process, you've got a spagyric essence of nettle.
Right.
Which is basically the best sort of nettle potion you can get.
And what would we do with the nettle potion?
That's a great tonic. You just take a few drops in water. Ideally, it's a spring tonic. and give you a bright eye and a shiny coat.
And what do people make of you, Guy, when you tell them that you're an alchemist?
I don't tell anyone I'm an alchemist. My friends tell everybody that they got a mate who's an alchemist. It's like, ah, so you're so-and-so's mate, the alchemist. So I get called the alchemist all the time. And it's funny because it just leads to a discussion about alchemy. And as you probably realise, I can talk about alchemy till the cows come home. It's my favourite topic of conversation.
Guy Ogilvy is a fascinating character, but for me, rather more of an enthusiastic herbalist than a classic alchemist in the mould of Newton and Flamel. That said, it's a treat to actually spend some time with someone so captivated by their passion for the subject that they're willing to turn their garden shed into a makeshift laboratory. But before I left, I had to ask him the $6 million question.
Do you believe that it is possible to turn lead into gold?
Yeah, of course. I think it's possible to create universes. Somebody did.
But why aren't you doing it? We could make a fortune, Guy.
It's very tricky. Very tricky. Not easy.
I guess the big question for me is, did these alchemists possess some kind of supernatural secret? And if they did they then pass this secret on down through the generations?
Back in the 1990s, author and historian Joy Hancox came into possession of hundreds of handwritten manuscripts, each one decorated with mysterious hermetic symbols and geometrical designs, some of which dated back to the 15th century. All she knew was that they were the private collection of John Byrom, an 18th century poet and intellectual who was a member of the Royal Society and the inventor of an early form of shorthand. But what were they?
I went to London University, I went to Cambridge University, I went to Oxford University, I spoke to experts of mathematics, I wrote to the history of mathematics in this country. I asked them whether they could help me understand what these represented. And I have to say, not one of them did. Not one. No.
Because they couldn't or because they didn't want to?
No, I don't think it was a question of them not wanting to. I think quite genuinely they did not understand what the geometry represented, and they didn't understand them, and I think that's an honest answer from me. The square out of the circle, it fits the whole of the foot of the globe's upper part. 369 is a rule for it.
As she researched further, Joy began to reveal that the manuscripts were, in fact, architectural designs and ground plans of famous London landmarks, including Westminster Abbey, St Paul's Cathedral, and most importantly, the original Globe Theatre from the time of Queen Elizabeth. At first, she wasn't sure how it all connected, but she was certain that the manuscripts contained distinct Masonic symbols, so she showed them to a leading Freemason.
I set all the drawings out on the table, and I thought, right, this must be something to do with Freemasonry. It must be something to do with that. I will set the drawings out in such a way, I know that that's a Masonic one, and I put it in strategic places. And what he did is he said, now, these are all very interesting. What can I do for you? And then I'll tell you what you can do for me.
She said that her Freemason contact actually helped her decipher a number of the symbols, codes and signs, including the connection to the Elizabethan theatres in London. As she delved further, she found evidence of a secret circle, many of whom were in the Royal Society, like John Byrom, who seemed to be the keepers of a powerful ancient knowledge, a mix of mathematics, metaphysics and alchemy that had been secretly encoded into the designs of the buildings themselves.
I came across this particular drawing and I sat looking at it and staring at it. And I mean staring at it, because you can see there are just no numbers on it whatsoever.
Right,
okay?
yeah, yeah.
You can see that.
Yeah.
And I counted the squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah?
Yeah.
And if you have a look, they're all dots. And if you can see the scoring all down the page like so. Can you see the scoring?
Can see that,
yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And then you've got a square inside it there, all right? All dots. And if you look at the corners here, you'll see that there's a sort of a split dividing, yeah?
Is that, what is this line cuts and
Can you
bisects it?
see that?
Yeah, got it.
And then you've got a ring that goes around here. Now, if you look very, very closely, that ring, at the edge of that ring, doesn't actually touch those dots. It's just shortly inside. In other words, there is an absolute precision here, which is absolutely remarkable, yeah?
Joy believes that the Kabbalistic mathematics in the geometry is very precise and revolves around the measure of 72. Everything in the Globe Theatre, she says, connects to this figure. The ground plan, the layout, the stage, everything. And she says it was quite deliberate.
This is magic in the eyes of those of the day because they didn't understand it. We all have an invisible space. The groundlings were standing in the open air of the theatre, which was this space here. When you get people who are gelling together and standing together and they're watching something, it can become very hypnotic. And astrologically, within that frame of 72, there is something really rather acoustically wonderful that can happen to people.
Now, if all the world's a stage, then surely, by extension, all the cosmos is a kind of play. And the stage then becomes a microcosm of the powers of the universe. This is very evident in a play like The Tempest, one of Shakespeare's late plays, where he develops the idea of an island of magical powers, all under the control of one man, the Magus, Prospero, who just might be based on John Dee or an idea of somebody like him, somebody who can command all the elements to do his will. And the fact that he can summon all this up, conjure it up on stage, is a real act of conjuration because, as Coleridge referred to, the suspension of disbelief, which is required by people who are engaged with theatre. Surely anyone watching theatre in those days was entering an alchemical furnace and becoming, in their own minds, part of the drama.
Joy, I'm absolutely fascinated by what you're telling me here. Was there a secret that these alchemists might have had here, and is this it?
Well, I am being as honest as I can. What I have learned is through the system that is here inherent within the drawings. I think that there is something within the laws of number symbolism that we can relate to nature in a way that may affect what the alchemists thought that they could achieve. I am absolutely 100% certain that through an understanding of what this represents, we can be taken into a kind of world that the Newtons of this world and John Dee might have done through their use of what other people would use the term alchemy.
So, was there really a secret circle of alchemists which had protected some ancient manuscripts and passed them down through the centuries? And had they encoded some sacred hermetic knowledge into the design of their theatres? Well, Joy is convinced this is the case. For my part, it certainly opens up some fascinating possibilities. If there was a secret circle of initiates in the 17th century, then the man who rose to become the father of modern science, Sir Isaac Newton, was most probably a member. In the last decade, his private papers have been released from the Royal Society in London, and they show that he was a dedicated and lifelong alchemist. Keith Moore, the head librarian, agreed to show me some of the great man's possessions and papers that they have in their vaults.
OK, Jamie, I brought out a few Newton items for you to have a look at, some memorabilia, books and manuscripts. Here's one of the very important ones. This is a copy of Newton's death mask. So this is the closest you will get to Isaac Newton. This is how he actually looked on his deathbed.
That's the man himself, right?
It is indeed. And sculptors would take these so that they could sculpt busts of him later as he became more and more famous.
Isaac Newton was, for a period of his life, a dedicated devotee of the alchemical quest. This knowledge has come to us since, mainly since the 1930s, when a large cache of his alchemical papers came to light, and studies were made of those papers. And whereas in the 19th century, this aspect of Newton had been suppressed as an embarrassment, how could the father of modern science sully his hands with this superstitious nonsense about the philosopher's stone? Well, Isaac Newton did sully his hands with the search for the philosopher's stone, and he spent a good number of years, starting around 1667, at his rooms in Cambridge, not in entire secrecy, trying to produce a scientific methodology of alchemy.
Was he a religious man? Was he interested in religion? Was that something?
He was. He not only wrote science, but he wrote theology as well, and also alchemy, of course, and that's the nature of the manuscript you can see here.
So talk me through what is this? What are we looking at here?
Well, Newton, when he launched himself at a subject, whether it was optics or mechanics, or in this case, alchemy, he would typically begin to take notes on it, and he would read as much as he could around a topic. And that's what he's doing here. These are Newton's notes of previous alchemical authors. And as you can see, they're written in Latin. Newton would have used that. The Principia manuscript, the great work of science, is a work in Latin.
So this is one of the greatest scientists of all time, the grandfather of modern science, and he had a keen interest in alchemy.
He did, yes. The men of that period who were interested in science would have called themselves natural philosophers, and they were interested in everything, not just what we would think of as being science now.
Newton was a very secretive man. But yes, he was definitely an alchemist. But I think he, for want of a better word, transmuted into something else, a scientist and a chemist.
So, did Newton, Flamel, Dee and other alchemists really have access to some ancient secret knowledge that was passed down to them across the centuries? Or were they just dabbling in the very early stages of modern chemistry? Our friends at University College in London are convinced it's the latter.
Now, there's one more aspect of alchemy that I think we should show you.
Yeah, this is one that I'm particularly excited about because it's perhaps a lesser-known dimension of alchemy that kicks in around the 18th century. This is philosophical fireworks.
Right. Okay, that sounds dramatic. What are we doing here?
And so what we have here is a little mixture to which I'm going to add water. You ready?
Do I need to stand back?
Let's...
Whoa.
Was that dramatic?
Wow.
It's quite a flash.
That's magic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as Arthur C. Clarke once said, any sufficiently advanced technology will always look like magic.
You know, I've been hearing a lot about Flamel and Boyle during the course of investigating this whole thing, and it strikes me that what you guys are doing is alchemy, right?
Well, in the sense that we're still transforming matter, there's no question. But I'd like to think of alchemy as being a metaphor rather than an actual process today.
Why do we still have, though, this great fascination with alchemy? Why do you think that is?
I think it's the secrecy surrounding it. I mean, alchemists had one or two successes. I mean, the discovery of phosphorus was by an alchemist at about this period, but that's pretty much it. Secret knowledge is fascinating in whatever form it comes in. Science, though, is how we understand the universe.
What do you make of the Philosopher's Stone?
It's a nice story, and it's in Harry Potter, of course, but that's as good as it gets.
So, what is the truth about alchemy? Was it really a dark art practiced by a small cabal of initiates down through the ages? Was the Philosopher's Stone a magical holy grail that could confer immortality on those who were able to achieve it? And did men like Dee, Flamel and Newton have a hand in designing buildings, even whole cities along sacred geometric and Kabbalistic lines? Well, it's an enticing premise for sure, but the majority of scientists and academics say no. The heady mix of occult rituals, hocus-pocus and superstitions aside, alchemy was, they say, just the early experiments and flowerings of modern science that has so dramatically changed our world today.
I think that the function that alchemists provided is now far obsolete. They were the shamans of their day that bridged our realm with others. They were the first scientists and chemists who explored with things that today are interesting but relatively mundane. Many of them, such as Edward Kelly, for instance, are now rendered simply practitioners of hocus pocus. Today, in the world of Facebook, where everyone's a light worker and has access to the wisdom of the ages on the internet, the role of the alchemist has clearly been made obsolete.
I'm convinced that alchemy was the forefather of modern chemistry. These guys were treated with a certain amount of disrespect. They were referred to as quack doctors. One phrase that I use frequently, today's magic will be tomorrow's science. And these guys in those days were treated as magicians. Some of the stuff they got was wrong. Some of the stuff they got was right, but it was certainly the basis of modern-day chemistry, medicine, and I think modern science.
Many things are being done in our laboratories which anybody listening to this program will know absolutely nothing about, and for a long time to come. Knowledge is dangerous, knowledge is power, and power trippers like Newton know that particularly well.
After his death, Sir Isaac Newton's private alchemical papers were found by the Royal Society. Now, amongst those was a handwritten letter to his friend and fellow alchemist, Robert Boyle, in which he warned him to maintain a high silence about the mystical knowledge they had learnt. It cannot be communicated, said Newton, without causing immense damage to the world. Make of that what you will.